Did she give us the names?
Yes.
I have it if you
Do
don't.
you have the names?
Okay.
Do you want to read all the names?
Yeah, so I'll make a motion to appoint the following people to the Town Administrator Pre-Selection Committee. Gerald Millette, Adam Lavoy, Nancy Lowell, Jeremy Olson, John Swistak, James McKeon, Daniel Thobodeau, Joshua Regan. Regan? That's it.
Okay, do I get a second on that?
Second?
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Aye. The members of the pre-selection committee have been voted unanimously, and
I have the slips if you can sign them, then I can swear them in.
we'll go from there. And with this, we should probably give them a little guidance on the selection. So with this, they're to select 3 applicants from the list, well, from the resumes they've been given. And I would say 2 alternates and identify the alternate in order. Your first alternate, your second alternate. That is in case if any of the 3 applicants that were selected decide that they don't want to be interviewed, we can bring the first alternate in to replace that. And if another one says, I don't want to be interviewed, we can bring the second alternate to fill that space. Ultimately, we'd like to hire at least, well, not hire, interview at least 3 so we can compare them. One of the things we've been having is we'd call, and even though they applied, gone through the whole process, by the time we call them and ask them if they're interested in interviewing, they decline. And we don't want to get just stuck with one applicant. We want somebody to be able to compare them with and interview, because that applicant might not interview very well, and we have to redo it again. So this will prevent us from having to do that. Are you good with that?
Yep.
You good with that?
Yes, sir. I have a question.
Yes, sir.
What if we only end up with 1?
Overall one, out of the top 5? Then we're,
Well, we take it and evaluate it, I guess.
yeah, reevaluate.
Okay.
Because again, you know, there's a lot of applicants. Some of them probably aren't qualified for the position. I respect that they apply, but, you know, the pre-selection committee is gonna choose the top 3 out of those and, you know, provide us with those names. You know, we gotta go with what they have chosen. That's why we give those alternates, just in case. But if we sit there and say, well, we gotta take the 6th one, the 7th one, the 8th one, now we just really trying to fill a spot, or we try to get the best qualified applicant? Because I think the goal is to get the best qualified applicant for us and not just fill the position.
Think is there, that's what I wanted to emphasize, that this committee will guide us and say, these are your best choices, and then leave it to us for the final decision.
Yes. Yeah, they'll refer the final three with the two alternates, and then ultimately we'll interview those three.
So is the committee checking references?
We will be, well, we're gonna have to check the references once we have those three.
Okay,
Because, again, it comes down to us. We're gonna have to go through and do the background checks, make
Yeah,
sure
okay.
everything's all done properly, and, you know, get the best qualified applicant, you know?
yeah,
But all that, once they refer the three, then it's out of their hands.
okay,
They're to go through all the applications and say, these are your best, that fit our town, and they voted and decided those are the applicants they want us to interview.
yeah, okay.
And, you know, at that point, once we have those three, then we can check the references. First of all, we'll call them, see if they actually want the job,
Yeah,
because we're not gonna do all the footwork and say, you know, okay, I checked all your references, you're great. Like, well, I don't want the job.
right,
You
yeah,
know? So we wanna make sure that they're actually willing to, you know, to do that. And some of them didn't submit references, so we'd have to request that too.
Yeah, okay,
Hey, can you give us some references? And do you have, if you have college, can you give us your transcript? Because not all of them gave all those additional items, even though we asked for it in the posting.
right.
Some people are hesitant and say, well, I'll give that to them upon request,
Mhm.
so.
So ideally, the 3 or 4 suggestions, any of those will be good candidates, so to speak, from the committee.
Yep. Any other questions?
No,
Okay. The other guidance for the committee is, you're gonna have to schedule a meeting, and on that first meeting, you're gonna have to elect a chairperson who's gonna represent you. Same thing with any other board, you're gonna have to have your structure. And some of you have done that last time. So, okay. Do you guys have any questions for us, the pre-selection committees? Do you need any additional guidance? Good. Did you have anything you want to say?
no?
Did you have anything you want to say?
I'm good.
Good luck, good reading.
Very good. You got your task, you got your guidance. Thank you very much.
They need to be sworn in. So
And you're gonna swear 'em in?
I'm gonna go swear at them right now.
And you can do that right now,
Yep,
and Karen can come back in.
okay. So she said I
Um,
could swear everybody in your office?
Yes, that's
Because they
fine.
all have to sign, so. I need,
So
like-
everybody is aware, Karen Dusty recused herself for this part because she is one of the applicants for the position. So she recused herself from the meeting to prevent any conflict. And all the members of the board are directed not to share any information on your decisions or who you're considering with Karen Dusty because she is an applicant. So to keep it fair, okay?
Okay.
Mr. Chairman, can I follow the HDMI?
Well, that's plugged into here.
Yeah, I know. I want them to see it.
Oh,
Then I'll pass it to you when it's time to share.
well, he's got it up for TV, he's got it up on his screen. So this is so we can go through the budget and show what we got on there.
Then everybody went away though.
Yeah, they'll be back in a second.
I know. I didn't lock it, I just closed it.
So what I wanted to show you is, is showing a 360 degree of the room,
Yeah.
so people can tell who is in the room, what in the room. And when somebody talks like I'm doing right now, it puts me on the spot.
It's kind of cool. And I lost, because it waited so long.
What happened?
It switched.
Oh, went to sleep.
It's on.
Yeah, I think it's.
Yeah, I know, it's definitely on, but I just can't see it.
It's getting falling asleep.
Now, Jeremy gave you one that's printed. Do you want me to go scan it in and so you can email it and put it up there?
No, I don't know.
Gentlemen, what
We're
was the
just
date
gonna
you
show
needed
the
the names
spreadsheet.
by? We
Was
just
that-
have to schedule a meeting. When is the date that you need the names by? We're just gonna.
What did we have when we did that? We decided
You were supposed to call them on the
second week.
18th, I think.
You were supposed to call them on the 18th.
The 18th?
So we could, if you could have them back to them by the 17th of March. No, February, sorry.
Okay, this is January. I was gonna say, I was like, this looks different than my calendar.
Yeah, basically you have 2 weeks.
Okay,
Yeah.
so if we meet next week, then we'll be all right.
Yeah.
Okay. All right.
And then you guys got all the resumes, so.
Yes.
So, Mr. Chairman, before you start sharing that,
Yeah.
you join the Zoom meeting and you share the screen.
Well, I believe you're gonna share your screen with it,
Yeah,
right?
I can do that.
Or do you need to be on?
No, I'm just the host.
Okay, but as a host, you can share your screen and still be a host?
Yeah.
Okay, all right.
Oh, can you enable participant sharing?
Just make you host back, because it's, maybe it's thinking you are the host, the principal host. I'll make you the host and then you bring me back.
Okay. There's a way to do co-hosting too, so.
Do you know it? I'll just make you a host for now.
Yeah, make me the host.
Nothing's gonna change it.
Okay.
Everybody has
All right.
if we were to meet on Tuesday next week, is that everybody
Okay.
We do have the Chris Dumpy thing. And this is to accept the community one-stop. Are you gonna be able to talk about this one, or do you want me to?
Yeah, well, this is a ton of information. What do we?
Well, all we're gonna
I
do
think
is
we
talk
just
about how
needed a
we're,
summary, right?
yeah, and identify the projects.
Expression.
Okay.
It's the
well,
expression of
So I
interest.
can explain it. So,
Or do you wanna?
this is a program, the expression of interest is just kind of a summary of some projects that we're thinking of, and then they can tell us, the state can tell us, you know, this one's good, this one's bad, this one's good, this one's bad, whatever. And it gives us, you know, sort of the next step. So what CMRPC and Chris Dunphy came up with are 5 projects that they're gonna submit. So a economic development master plan for the Wrights Mill with Dex Trust. School Street, where we're doing sidewalk and drainage improvements. Prospect Street, we're replacing the water main. Pulaski Street, we're gonna do a design to move, because right now the water line goes through the mill. And what it really should do is probably go around the mill down Pulaski Street to serve like the back, what's called the patch back there. And then River Street in West Warren, water main replacement. They've had a bunch of issues with that particular main breakage and stuff, and they want to actually loop it back into the main going down 67.
Okay, and this is just the community one-stop, it's expression of interest. Again, it's just a bunch of projects that Chris Dunphy from CMRPC is proposing for the community one-stop with the expression of interest to see if we can get grants for any of these types of projects or funding for these items to help with the costs of doing these projects, if not fund them completely. So, but yeah, so I would say, you know, I'm good with it. I have no questions about it. It's a good program. It's a way of us getting more grant money and casting a wide net instead of just trying to locally go after one grant. The Community One Stop opens it up to a whole bunch of grants that can be obtained depending on the qualifications, correct?
Yeah, yeah.
Okay, so, do you have any questions, Derek?
Well, I just want to say thank you, because we've been knocking doors and trying to figure out how to do things, and thanks to Chris Dunphy and all the help from CMRPC, I think this is it's a wonderful opportunity that the town will get, you know. Definitely we cannot afford it, so I feel very happy about it. It's very exciting to see this, at least get it started.
Yeah.
Yes, Chris, thank you very much for doing this for us, and we appreciate all your assistance. So I guess we'll do a motion to enter into an expression of interest with the Community One-Stop Program, and have Chris Dunphy submit an expression of interest.
So
Of course.
moved.
Second?
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Aye. The motion passes unanimously, and Chris Dunphy has permission to enter into an expression of interest for us. All right. So we're looking at doing pay scales and budget discussions for the fire department and the highway department tonight. They are both here, but they are both getting sworn in as part of the department heads for the pre-selection committee. So we could probably move on to something else to get that out of the way. While they're doing it, we could do warrants and bills.
Yeah, sure, let's do warrants and bills. All right, I'll make a motion to pay the following warrants and bills. Warrant number 64, payroll, $48,416.30. Warrant number 65 for vendors.
Did you make copies of the resumes for everybody?
$701,800.
No, Nancy, I emailed them to you guys,
Okay,
so you guys are gonna have to print them. You gotta keep Karen out of it.
okay, all right.
Thank you. All right, sorry, Karen.
That's okay.
Okay? Don't want anybody,
I agree.
so,
All right, so warrant 65 for vendors was $701,811.15. The following bills: Verizon for $136.30, National Grid for a credit of $21,007.77, Google for $366, and Economic Envirotechs for the boxing room, $1,500, and for the windows for $1,100. 2 for KP Law, $724.40 and $890.63. And then a dehumidifier from Amazon for the boxing room, $599.99. I need a second.
Second?
all in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Aye. The motion passes unanimously, and we will pay the warrants and invoices, the warrants and bills. Okay, we approved the minutes for January 20th. Can I get a motion?
I make a motion to approve the minutes for January 20th, 2022.
Get a second?
Second?
All in favor?
Aye, sorry.
Aye.
I needed a drink.
Aye. The motion passes unanimously for the minutes for January 20th, 2022.
Didn't we have another set of minutes?
Was it the 22nd?
Oh, it's because
27.
those were fine.
Oh.
Sorry.
Next meeting.
Okay.
Okay. All right. So we got,
We got highway and fire.
yep, we got highway and fire back now. All right. So, we just moved on because you guys weren't in here, so we moved on and took care of some of the clerical stuff to get that out of the way. First up would be the fire department and discussion on pay scale and budget. And we also have John Nason in here as part of FinCom. John?
Yes, I'm not posted, so I'm here as a.
You're here as an observer? Okay,
Madeline's down in Florida, so they should be back in time. We
okay.
have a posted meeting next Tuesday upstairs, so we'll discuss it as a group.
Okay, all right. So, basically what we're looking at is we gotta deal with two things. With dealing with your budget, we also gotta deal with the pay scales for the upcoming fiscal years, for the next 3 fiscal years. In order to determine what your budget's gonna be, we gotta fix the pay scales. So you guys have guidance on what you're supposed to be doing and what you should be planning for. I have the fire department's pay scales for 2022 up there, and then blank for 23, 24, and 25. We have Chief Adam Lavoy in here to discuss for his department and his pay scale part. And, no, we don't need that much later. Chief, if you actually can come up front.
Sure.
I know all you guys like to hide in the back, but, you know, we do have seats in the front, too. So, with your, so I'll hand it over to you, Chief. Do you want to give us a breakdown of what your plans are and what, why?
Sure. Good evening, everybody. Thank you for having me in tonight. I've been looking forward to this opportunity to.
Make sure you address who you are.
Yes, I'm sorry, Adam Lavoy, Fire Chief. Thank you for having me in this evening. I've been looking forward to having the opportunity to talk about a few of these things. I think one of the biggest problems that we've had in our community has been the pay scales. I know for myself, and I'm sure I'm speaking for Jeremy and Jerry, that we have run into a brick wall when it comes to keeping our full-time positions filled. They have become a revolving door, and unfortunately, we are just not competitive with other communities of similar comparison or just generally in the area. So we're trying to fix that problem, and the first step is evaluating the pay scale. Tonight, I can kind of walk through as to how I've put this together and where it came from. First, I guess I'll say, you know, and maybe others can shed light. I'm holding the original pay scale here. This was in place pretty much before my time even. I honestly couldn't tell you where this came from. I don't know where it came from. I don't know who created it. I have never been able to figure that out and where they even came up with these arbitrary numbers that are on here. So I don't know if the board does have this sheet. I know Karen had it at one point, but I will pass this around. Okay, you have these? Okay.
Yeah.
So these are comparative numbers for other communities in our area and what they're paying. These are starting, I just want to mention, these are walk in the door starting salaries.
Okay.
These are not longevity salaries. These are not, 4 years on the job. These are walking into the door salaries. And as you can see, Warren is by far the lowest of the communities on there. And that is one of the inherent problems that we're having, retaining people, because we're training them, we're sending them to the academy, and then they're walking out the door on us 6 months later. So hopefully we can fix that issue. So what I did was I looked at if you look up at the screen, you see the EMT firefighter.
Can you expand that? Oh, no, that's me. Sorry, we all got our duties here.
What you can do is zoom the sheet down in the lower right. Oh yeah, maybe not that much.
Yeah, I went too far. Are you looking
Yeah.
for?
So if you look and it says EMT firefighter, and actually that's a little bit different than mine. Mine says the starting is 1755 on mine, but that's the latest update that I had, but it's close, 1756. So that's what a firefighter EMT makes when they walk in the door at the Warren Fire Department. A couple of things I'll point out, and I'm sure again I speak for others in the room, that, you know, not only is this antiquated and just kind of off the wall, but it also only allows for a pay raise, a true pay raise every 3 years. And that's another huge problem. So you have a firefighter potentially, or a highway worker, or others that walk in the door, they work 3 years, and they are getting paid the exact same amount as someone that came in yesterday. So they're doing 3 years without a single increase, really, other than a fiscal year increase, which it shows here, which is a small increase. But they're not actually getting a percentage, they're not getting anything in those years that they're working, and someone's coming in the door behind them and making the exact same amount. So that in itself is kind of a broken, an issue. So what I did was I looked at my 4 employees, I looked at what their longevity was, and how long they've been on the department and where they came from. And I looked at where their step is and where I feel it should be, comparatively speaking to other towns, so that we can actually be in a realm that is realistic in order to start retaining people the way they should be. You know, I have a couple of employees, and myself included, that we live locally, we have families, we have kids in the school system, so we inherently kind of take the hometown discount in some ways. However, I have other employees that, you know, they can't afford to do that. They can't, and they're younger people coming in the door. They're looking for, you know, they got lives to support and families to you know, start taking care of. So they just can't afford to work for that. So what I basically did was I took the step that they came in the instance of my first employee on the very top. This is an employee that's only been here for a year, not you know, hasn't been here for that long. So basically what I did was I added approximately $3 to that pay scale, okay, which puts us at least in the competitive, or at least comparable range with the other communities that are listed on the sheet. So at least it gives us something to be able to get them in the door and hopefully keep them, okay? So as you see, you can look down there, so that starting pay went from 17, in this case 55, on mine it says, this says 56, mine says 55. So that pay increase went to $20.55 as a starting salary. Next one down to $20.89, because that's where his step, that person is currently at a step, and then so on and so forth.
Wait, Adam, back up. So
Yep.
where are you putting the $20 some odd number in the FY '23?
FY '23, for the
Minimum.
minimum would be $20.55.
2055.
Or in this case, if you wanted to do it to 2056, I'd have to adjust my thing, because my pay scale
yeah.
says 2055.
You added 3.
So for the minimum,
1755, yes. So the minimum would go to, you know, what I have on my paper is 2055.
So did you add $3 the whole way down?
Basically, yes. You know, I did account for if they were in a different step. So say someone was transitioning within this fiscal year from one step to another because they hit an anniversary mark, I accounted for that. But basically speaking, it's across the board, a $3 to just over a $3 raise per
you're correct,
hourly.
it's $17.55.
Okay. So that starting salary went to $20.55 for that particular employee that just came in the door, only has a year or less under their belt.
Okay.
The next employee that I have, it was actually hitting their 3-year step this year. So, you know, his particular salary I listed as $20.89. So it's another $3 raise. That would be the next step down, and kind of so on and so forth. The last 2 employees I've had are employees that have some longevity. These are employees that are hitting, you know, either 8 to 10 years, and in one case, 16 years. So these are people that have been with us for a while, and I want to keep them, you know? So they deserve to be paid in a different, you know, a little bit higher category, because even if I stayed within their step, as an entry-level firefighter EMT in other towns, they're making that coming in when they've been here for 16 years. So, you know, we had to make a little bit of an adjustment there, but I think what we have is at least fair across the board, and a good starting and jumping off point to kind of go forward with these adjustments in the future. The one thing I'd like to suggest to the board or ask is exactly what we want to do from here. There's a couple of different options. And obviously, I'm sure the board wants to do the same for other departments. I don't think they want the police doing one thing and fire doing another thing and the highway doing their thing, you know. I think, my personal opinion, at this point, you have contractual employees like myself, you have unionized employees like the police that negotiate contracts. I really think it should be no different. I think there should be a percentage increase each year, which would keep us competitive, you know. Instead of them waiting 3 years to get a raise, I think that we should look at maybe doing a 2 or 3% raise each year and having that as a starting salary for the next fiscal year across the board. That would be my suggestion, or one way that the board could go with employees, because I do think that there's cost of living adjustments every year, prices are going up. I do think that each employee deserves some sort of an increase each year. And I think that's kind of what, you know, my contract usually says, and, you know, the police chief and the patrolman and everything like that. So I think it's kind of fair across the board to start looking at it in that realm, to reward the employees each year with some sort of an increase. That's what I'd like to see. I'm pretty sure that's probably where they're going.
Yeah, I didn't consult Adam on this at all, but him and I actually have the exact same numbers. I increased all of my employees $3, and it puts us at a competitive rate. And I didn't talk to him about this.
And that's honestly
And
not
the
true.
percentage rate, as far as increase, that's exactly what I calculated. Instead of doing the step system, let's just do a 2 or 3% raise to keep us in that competitive market. Like I said, I didn't consult them, but that's exactly where I was at too.
And that goes to prove, and that's a true statement, and that goes to prove of what he's seeing is the same as that I'm seeing.
Yep.
That is where the salaries are and where they kind of need to be in order to start righting the ship in this particular, you know, circumstances. Because again, you know, this has never made sense to me. I've never understood why it was like that, and there's really no room for reward or growth for employees with the current system.
And do you find towns around here do 2 or 3%?
Most of the, you know, when you're talking contracts and stuff, most people are getting that kind of increase. That's a normal world to live in. You know, I mean, I think that's a fair amount for the board to decide on and what they want to do going forward. But, I mean, you know, that's the world I've lived in with contracts, and I'm sure these gentlemen the same, and, you know, and I know the Patrolmen's Association negotiates certain things behind the scenes too. So I don't think it's out of the realm of reality that's a normal procedure.
Okay.
So, my concern with, you're basically proposing a contract for every one of your employees.
No, not a contract, just basing the numbers, not a contract at all. I'm not asking to unionize or anything like that. I'm just asking to, if we're gonna look, instead of steps, instead of a step increase that happens every 3 years, we just look at a percentage increase that happens on a yearly basis, that's all. It's not a contract, it's not anything that's signed or anything like that. It's just another way of looking at the pay scale. And I'm open for suggestions, you know, and however else we can do this, if there's another way that the board wants to do it. I just want to make sure that we don't get lost in the weeds where we have been for years, where they're not getting anything until they hit another 3 years.
Well, I think that was the intent of upping it in the fiscal years, because yes, it's a cost of living increase, but you're getting an increase the next year. And yes, you're not getting a pay raise each year, but you are getting paid more each year through a cost of living increase. And I'm very hesitant to say that, like, a department head should be the authority to decide whether an employee gets something or not, because I think that could cause a lot of conflict within the town, as far as, okay, I really like this guy, and I'm not saying you would ever do it. I really like this guy. I'm gonna give him 3%.
No.
And I'm gonna,
Let me clarify. This is not my decision. This would be the board's decision across the board with all employees. I'm not giving percentages. I'm suggesting that the board may want to look, instead of these small cost of living things, just one way to go would be to just give it a regular increase each fiscal year for that all positions, not just fire department or something like that. This is not wouldn't be something I do there. I said, well, this year you get a 3% and this year you get a 2%. It would be a decision made by the board, not the individual departments. That's what I'm suggesting.
But aren't you proposing that basically as you move horizontally across that scale, it goes up 2 or 3%? Isn't that what you're saying?
That's what I'm proposing, that not just for fire, I'm just saying, in my particular world, that's what I'm looking at, and it sounds like Jeremy's looking at a similar thing. I think we're
Well,
talking
cost
about.
of living thing you would
Well,
typically
you
get.
can call it whatever you want, I'm just saying, you take away the cost of living or call it a cost of living, but it should be aligned with that percentage, it's all I'm saying. I'm not saying they get a cost of living and 3%, I'm saying they just work it out so that they can get a set amount each time, so that, as long as my biggest thing is I just want to keep the people I have and keep them in-house. So getting it to that $3+ or $3 increase, just to get them to that rate where they should be, is the first huge step, However, we want to address it with just a simple cost of living thing, that's fine, we can call it that. I'm just suggesting it be within that 2 or 3% each fiscal year. So, I'm sorry,
Okay.
I want to clarify.
Yeah, the way
I
you
was
made it
not,
sound like-
no, I apologize. If I misled anybody, I'm not asking for free reign to decide what percentage my employees should get every year. That's not what I'm suggesting. I'm just suggesting we all get the same thing. so
Right, and
it's
that's
fair
what we
for
want to be,
everyone.
is we want to
Yes.
be equal throughout the town and not doing something different for each
No,
department.
and I'm sorry if I
And-
misled anybody or anybody misunderstood. I was just suggesting that you can call it a cost of living, call it whatever you want to call it. I'm just suggesting we get to a certain point like this, and then we adjust each year for that.
Yeah.
Okay, so I just did, so that minimum step, FY '23 is 2055, then 2024, it would go up, let's say 2%, so it'd be 2096, and FY '25, it'd be 2138.
Sure, if you went 2%.
2%,
Correct,
okay,
yes.
just we're all on the same page.
Yes.
2138 would be the FY '25, so that would be a 2% every year. So it's baked in, right?
Yeah, and that's all I'm suggesting, that I think that, because again, we were missing that, the other step increases, those would kind of go away, because those have just never really been effective. It's just an increase every year, and that's it. They don't hit the different steps like they used to, and it's just a very weird system that they used to do in terms of how that happened, because these used to not even be like this. They were changed in a different way before, because you had to wait 3 years to get a raise. That's how it used to be. So as long as we get away from that system, that would be great.
So then what about moving vertically through the table? Is there a % increase there? So if I go from step 1 to step 2, do I get a 3%?
Well, it would be across the board for each step for the fiscal year, going across each one of them. But I think it bogs it down because then you gotta really kind of figure out, like, how did you get from step 1 to step 3 to justify the other amount?
Right now, what you're looking at right now is you have 2 raises. You have a raise for the fiscal year, and then you have a raise every time somebody hits a step. And those steps account for 3-year increments.
Right.
So if you could either do away with the steps altogether and just continually raise but also, in my opinion, I mean, someone that comes in, the thing about the steps that I do like is that if somebody comes in the door with 10 years' experience, they can get credited for it. We were never allowed to do that before. We were always told that, no, they come in the door, I don't care if they work 15 years over in Charlton, they come in the door, they're brand new here, and they start at the bottom.
That's ridiculous.
And that was what we always.
You're
were
never
told
gonna be
we
able
had.
to recruit
Well, that's the
anybody.
problem, and I believe that the sewer department was running into that,
Yeah.
and everything, and for the first time, the board allowed us to jump people's steps because of their longevity in another position somewhere else in another town. So I would like to keep that factor. I mean, I don't have a problem with this equation, so to speak, as long as we bump them to where they need to be so that they can continue to climb. We just need to fix the starting salaries is the biggest issue.
Right, and we agree. We just gotta figure out how we're gonna do it. And I know Mr. Nason has a comment about that. What's your feeling, sir?
I'm totally with Adam as far as the logic of this whole thing goes, and I understand exactly where he's coming from. But it all boils down to that initial starting point, right?
Right.
I am all the surrounding towns' information here, but I have questions on that from Adam as to, you know, is this their average salary?
No, that's the
People-
starting coming in the door.
Starting coming
That's
in the
the
door.
starting, that's what I mean. That's the problem, is that we are so far below. Those are when we got those salaries from people, I asked them, if you hire a full-time firefighter or EMT tomorrow, what is their pay rate when they walk in the door with zero experience coming out of the academy? And that's how far ahead they are of us.
So I think we need to explain what the problem is by being lower than every other town too.
Well,
By
can I
being
finish
frugal,
For a second?
one second, I just want to explain. By being frugal and being much lower than everybody else, what we essentially become is a training ground for employees. We train them, get them the experience, like something like police department, firefighters. You send them to the academy, they get trained, they come back, and then they get marketed somewhere else where they can make much more money. If you're gonna make $2, $3, $4 more an hour, and you're just going to the next town, it's very difficult for us to keep those employees in here after we invested that initial investment to keep them here. And I know some contracts, the collective bargaining agreements say that they have to be here for so many years before they can move, or they're gonna pay back their training. That's not the case for everything. Not everybody's a union employee. Not everybody's under a collective bargaining agreement. And the collective and bargaining agreement is, how do we enforce that on an employee too? If they do decide. And they may just find, well, it's easier for me to pay back a few grand and go somewhere else where I can make 10 grand more a year. It's hard to force that employee to stay. So that's the problem we're running in by being much lower. That's why we're trying to resolve this issue. And the floor is yours, down the station.
Yeah, again, I agree 90% with what Adam said here. The problems I do have, I think the percentage increase every year should be decided by the Board of Selectmen on a yearly basis, and not preconceived now, because situations change year to year, and we all need to understand that. So I would set personally the starting for everybody in town, and then work on percentage off of that. And then you just gotta realize that people are gonna move positions, like in Jeremy's crew, he may have a truck operator now that's gonna be a plow operator tomorrow, and they need to be able to move those people into that pay scale in order to keep moving on and keep the growth going on in this department. So this has been a piece of crap for years. I've never understood it, you know, but most companies will. They'll just say, okay, this is what you're starting at, and every year we calculate a raise percentage for you based on how we're doing. And that could be 3%, it could be 5%. You don't know until you look at the situation at hand, right? So I think it's a good start. I wouldn't nail down any percentages now. That it'll at least be a cost of living increase, but it could be more. You know,
And I'm fine with that too, and I think.
But how would we do that though?
Well,
And that's
the
the
town
thing.
has always been having trouble in doing performance evaluations for their,
And I know when we had the
Right.
town administrator, that was one of the things.
and
They were
that
gonna
should be a
do.
piece of it, right? That Adam, he's got 4 employees, he
Yeah.
does 4, he has to get them signed up by the Board of Selectmen, and then a decision to make. If I say, Board of Selectmen, I'm gonna give out 5% this year, it may not be every employee gets 5%, right?
Right.
It should be, you know, the people that are performing at the level that Adam is comfortable with, they may get a 5%. You know, somebody else might get a 3%, but it's all based on performance and
I agree, I agree that, you know, maybe it's good to
So-
have the board.
One thing I could say about that is we kind of, in working for the government, we kind of have something like that. It's not quite like that, but what it is the supervisor can put in a recommendation to either give the employee an additional step increase and bump them up on the pay scale,
That makes more sense, is use the
or,
step system.
or do a incentive award. And that incentive award could be a one-time award for the year at the end of their performance. And it could be either monetary or through additional leave. So typically, employees are given a choice like, okay, I'd rather get the money than the leave time. And the supervisor can say, okay, you performed really well, so I'm gonna give you a choice. Either I can give you, 12 hours of leave time or 24 hours of leave time, or you can have the equivalent in cash. And that's a way of giving somebody an award, but we would have to figure out how we would do something like that. And I know Dawn's back there squinting her eyes like, what's going on here? How would we do that? Because right now, we're so set in this scale. And I agree, we need to do something different. But how do we get away from this and be fair to every town employee and still have something to work with, because we need some sort of set scale.
Mr. Chairman.
So where they start from, like you said.
So what I would suggest, and I don't want to speak for the others, but what I would suggest, my main concern is kind of what John just said. My main concern is nailing down a new starting area where we increase for the next fiscal year. And then, something like this, whether it's a department head decision, whether it's a board decision, whether it's a town administrator discussion and decision, we have time to deal with that. I'm more concerned with getting the increase there of the $3 starting in the fiscal year and nailing down the steps per se, so that they have some longevity rewards coming down there. I think those are the two goals, at least that I see right off the bat. And then whether or not we discuss the 2%, 3%, whose decision that is, that can come later. I'm more concerned with, as Mr. Nason said, getting to a fair starting salary and keeping people retained. And then we can kind of decide what we need to do the next fiscal year and how we're going to do it. But I think we're all in agreement that that is probably the most important part, is getting the step and the actual increase for next fiscal year there. In my opinion, I can tell you right now, I'm looking at this, I've lost I've lost more than three, but three of my full-time firefighters went to other towns on this exact list, within 6 months of them being hired.
Well, I know everybody's been losing people.
I
Sort of
I lost somebody at the
highway
beginning of the
department,
month.
police.
I mean, it's one thing.
Everybody-
Same
and
thing,
it's-
we left for more money.
It's one thing to be 15 cents under another town. No one's gonna change their life and up their kids and everything like that and pick up for 15 cents. But when you're talking $3, that's a big incentive. I mean, that's how far behind we are. So, getting into at least a comparable range is the goal.
Yes, Mr. Lees.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. So first, I want to say this is not my expertise. So if I don't sound as good as I would like to, I hear you're recommending $3 and 2 or 3%, right?
At least $3 for an increase to all of the full-time staff's.
And then you mentioned 2 or 3%. So
Hourly salary. Yes.
we all know this thing. It's a commercial, and it says America runs on donkey. We all hear that, right? I believe Warren runs on you. And if it was possible, and I just want this to, touch the back of your heads and your hearts, I will propose twice as much, $6 and 6%. I probably, as I said, this is not my expertise, but Warren runs on you.
Well, I'll be perfectly honest. I sat down with my full-time people. We had conversations about this. This isn't a number I picked out of the hat. This was something that I looked at comparatively with other communities. I listened to their concerns and where they thought they would be. I don't know what the police union is negotiating. I'm sure that we'll come to a fair thing. If the board wants to suggest a different thing, the $3 was where I was comfortable with and where the staff was comfortable with, where at least it was a jumping point, where at least they could say that they're making a fair wage for their job description compared to other communities.
I would even say $1 more than everybody around town.
And that's a decision that the board can certainly talk about. I did not want, my intention was not to come in here and sound greedy, like I was going to, or anything like that. I don't think that's any of our intentions. All our focus is on right now is getting them a fair wage so they will stay here and work. That's my concern.
So one of the things we gotta recommend, and I just want the board to remember, is as we go up in here, that means we need to get the revenue from somewhere else. And whether that's tax-based or another means through, agreements through the, say, businesses come into town or whatever, the money has to come from somewhere. So we have to be conscious of that the town doesn't have an infinite budget. Majority of our residents live below poverty level, and it's very difficult. Yes, I think we all agree that you deserve to be paid way more than what you get. But whether we can financially do that as a town, we have to be fiscally responsible too, within that effort. Because we absolutely cannot compete with.
Well, I get, we're not gonna be Ludlow and Wilbraham and East Longmeadow.
We can't compete with Southbridge, we can't compete with, Belchertown. It's hard to compete with some of these bigger towns because, again, they have a lot of business, they have a lot of influx into taxes that allow them to be able to make those decisions and pay higher rates for those. Wilbraham, it's $27 an hour, $27.25. We can't compete with Wilbraham.
And that's why
it's never gonna
I would
happen.
never come in the door asking
No.
for that, because it's not in reality,
Right.
it's not gonna happen. We know that, but I think what we're asking for, at least speaking for my department, and obviously
Yes.
knowing that Jeremy's doing the same thing, we're asking for a fair wage comparatively speaking to other communities.
So I'll throw this out. If you take the average of all these wage rates, not including Warren, it comes out to 22.25. So actually, what they're asking is under that average for the other towns, so.
But we gotta
I
also.
think it's a fair,
We gotta look at the size of our population versus other towns and their populations and what they do.
yeah, although
Because it's hard, we can't, I'm surprised Sturbridge only pays $20.84.
Well, a lot of their people are paramedics too, so these are, keep in mind, these are firefighter EMT basics, not paramedics or anything like that.
Because I figured Sturbridge would be being much more of a higher tax base there.
No.
So,
These are the numbers they gave us when we contacted them, so.
yes, sir.
We also have to look at, for every of your guys, how many people they serve. I know the other towns are bigger, but they have more firefighters, they have more police officers. So it is a balance, and we've been getting some grants, we've been getting some help, so I think we have to create some conscience on the town. You are the, like I said, Warren runs on you. We have to look for and do as much as possible to get you, if not as good as the others, get so close so we don't lose people.
Well, I think that I think the consensus in the room from what I'm hearing is that everybody understands the problem, and that's a good thing. And I think between the board and the finance committee, maybe we can come to something that's even a little different than this. But this is where we came in under this, and it sounds like Jeremy did the same thing, where this is the bare minimum that we need to ask for in order to start retaining people. This is where we, at the very minimum, have to be with these numbers, because at this point, they're just working for nothing, and they're just gonna find other places to go. So this is the jumping off point, and if we adjust a little bit more, so be it, but this is where we can at least keep our staff going.
I have to say, we have two department heads who came up with the same increase with their own independent research.
Mhm.
I think we should go with it. I mean, if we want to give them more, but we got to think about the budgets. But I think minimum, I'm willing to go with the $3 based on what they've come up with. I think it's a smart move.
What do you feel?
Well, you can pull my strings all the time. I agree with Rich. You know, if you guys come up with that, I'm assuming you had some expectation that said, well, if they don't agree with 3, maybe we get 2. But
That thought had entered my mind if I came in with 4 and he'd said 3, but
Yeah.
I came in with 3.
You
with
came
the
in with 3,
understanding
I
that
went-
it was the minimum of what we could afford to,
Yeah, and-
what we needed to right the ship, start doing that.
That's
And like
exactly
I
where we're
said,
at.
they are probably gonna say, hey, Derek, quiet down. We don't wanna give them 6. We can't give them 6. But if it was possible, I would definitely,
Well,
this is.
I'm sure we'd love to give them much more money. All of us would love to give them more money. But again, we don't have an infinite budget.
Yeah, I
You
understand.
know?
That's-
So can I ask, so to John's point, if we were to fix these fiscal year increases at, say, 2%, on this piece of paper, this spreadsheet, can we?
Well, I think his argument was not to fix
Well,
anything,
no, but
to
hold
get
on.
rid of that
No, but
and
I'm saying.
address it each year.
Well, but I'm saying, okay, so my base question is, we have the power to change the percentage every year. When we set this grid, it's not fixed
No.
for 3 years, okay. So one thing to consider.
Well, it is if after town meeting, if that's what we decide to do. But
Well, no,
if
but I'm saying if
we
we
take
set this.
recommendation of John and we say, we're gonna do 2023, this is their scale for 2023.
Readjust.
Next year, they're gonna make 2020, well, they're gonna make the same thing as 2023 unless we vote to do a 2% increase across the board,
Or a 3% increase.
or a 3%, or a 20% increase.
Okay, I'll
Yeah,
go back,
whatever.
I'll go back to the attractive thing though, so a potential candidate, if they were to see that, yeah, they'll come to Warren and they'll get a good starting, but then over the next 2 years, they're gonna make 0 increase.
But that's also that risk too, because the selectmen, whoever they are, at that point can just sit there and say, you know something, I can't see it in the budget, you know, we're having a hard time right now, we're gonna keep it level funded, and you're not getting a raise. And then that could happen also. So this is a risk, you guys, to roll a dice.
Well, and that's
If
why.
that's what you wanna do.
That's why I think it will.
Because if you do the fiscal, if you assign it for each fiscal year, you know what you're getting. You may not get 3%, you may get that fixed rate across,
But
but
again,
you
you
know
know,
you're getting something.
this has been out of we have never been able to change this. So we've always lived within this scale. So, I mean, even if it was across the board, they're still at least where they should be. And if you keep the steps going, at least they're still getting something for years on. And the other point that I want to bring up, I'm very appreciative that this board is now allowing us that if someone comes in the door, we can assign them at a different step. That's a huge thing. That's huge. I mean, because we had people flat out denying, saying, I can't afford to work. You're gonna tell me that I got 15 years' experience and I'm starting where this guy started yesterday? You know what I mean? And that's what we were doing to them before.
Well, you couldn't get anybody.
So just the combination of increasing their hourly salary and the combination of allowing us to see the department heads make the decision due to their experience and their certifications where they should be on that scale starting. And as long as it's agreed upon by the board and the finance committee and the department head, that's a huge step in the right direction.
Finance committee can only advise.
Yes, but
So,
Yeah, but
speaking
it's
of
Advise
that,
in the
good to
positive,
have
yes.
an, you know,
speaking of that, Mr. Nason, what's your feeling? And can you identify yourself so everybody knows?
John Nason, chairman of the board for the finance committee. We're not in a meeting right now, so I can only talk as an individual.
Right, and I want your opinion.
My opinion is this wage scale adjustment is well overdue. It all boils down to the starting point. I'll go back to where you initially start these guys, right, or these girls, because we're talking all town employees. At some point, it will fit in to some range within this pay scale. And once you establish that, then I think you can get rid of steps if you want to, right? I don't know of any any non-union place which would guarantee you anything year after year, all right? I've been in business for 50 years, and we never do that. It's like, it's how the company's doing or how the business is doing dictates how you're gonna get compensated in the future. So there's no guarantees other than a union position. And it's a nice place to be because it allows us to react to extremely good employees. I had an employee that just started, well, a year now, and got brought in at a certain point. She performing at a high level. We immediately bumped her up within a couple of months. You know, we recognize the talent. But along with all that comes, you know, how am I equitable to my employees?
Right.
And I think that's the department heads that need to say, okay, I've got to look at whatever the evaluation process. It could be a one paragraph, you know, but something that documents that they performed at a higher level. Because if you have another employee come at you that feels disgruntled because they didn't get treated that same way, you have evidence to support your decisions, right? And once you do that, you get the starting pay wages down. Now it gives you the flexibility to move people around in the different classifications, so to speak. You know, and not every job is worth the same price, right? It's like, I'm not going to hire a painter at a carpenter's wage to do my carpentry work. It's just not feasible for me. It's up to people that actually run these departments to make those decisions. That's what they're paid for. So, or at least help to make those decisions. So. But as far as ripping this thing apart and rebuilding it, I'm all for it.
So if we go with 1 year, one fiscal year at a time, and decide on the next fiscal year, you know, at the town meeting, then I think it would be a good idea for, again, department heads to go back out and do the research and figure out what a good minimum is and balance that against what the town finances or what we can afford to try and come up with that new, I mean, because now we may not even talk about a percentage. You know, Adam may come up with, you know, say it's $30 an hour. So now we got to think, okay, it's $30 an hour, can we afford that? Instead of saying, oh, we'll just raise everybody 2%. We would have more of a dynamic system that's always being evaluated and trying to meet what's attractive to bring people in.
Don, did you have a comment?
Yeah, I mean, there's other things that
John,
can,
I was talking to Don.
Sorry.
Sorry.
My concern with that is, how do you budget that? How do
Right.
you approve this before the budget cycle even starts, and how do you constantly move when you're working within your very finite budget? So you're saying to get the wage scale approved at the town meeting, right?
Mhm.
You'd need to get the wage scale approved at this town meeting for next fiscal year, because at this annual town meeting, we also need to approve the budget for '23. That is already set, so we can't set the rates at the town meeting, because we already have our budget, so we have to be a year in advance. We constantly have to be a year in advance with our wages to be able to budget and present that at the town meeting.
Okay.
but
Do you
the-
Right, but I mean, that's
what I see.
Timeline.
That's what we're doing right now, though, right? We're trying to
Yeah,
establish.
that's what we've used this for, to do our budgets every single year. We're
Yeah.
just ripping this apart and building it back together,
So-
you know, in some way.
But if we do that, we have to do that for every employee. And I understand what Don's saying, that could pose a nightmare for us later on, because here we're constantly reevaluating, and how do you plan for that constantly? Where if you have something fixed, it's there, it's in writing, we know what we're doing. And, you know, I like the idea of evaluating, like, okay, a percentage. So we know baseline is gonna be this. You know, say, it's gonna be, the baseline is gonna be the same thing as 2023. But the selectmen could vote for a 2% increase throughout the town. And everybody would get a cost, you know, an increase. The problem with that is you never know who's gonna be your elected leaders, and you may get somebody here who is very fiscally prudent and won't vote for something, will never vote for an increase because they think you get paid over, you get overpaid. And that is a risk to take. And there's unsurety about that, because that's gonna build animosity, because if somebody has to wait 3 years to get a pay raise, and they're not getting a cost of living increase, and the select board at that time won't do it, because whatever, the budget, the economy's not working out so well, and it doesn't happen. Because none of us can guarantee we're gonna be here after 3 years. You're the longest one here, so you're gonna be here for 3 years, but after that, there's no guarantee he's gonna be here. Derek's up for re-election this year, I'm up next year. There's no guarantee any of us are gonna be here to make sure that happens. So this is a roll of dice for that, something like that. And it sounds like, budget-wise, trying to do something like that would be very difficult. We'd have to figure out how to do it. Yes, sir.
We don't
Mr.
budget
Mason.
out X number of years, right? I haven't seen it here since I've been here in town. We look at today, right? So to address Don's point, I think this doesn't have to go on the floor. This is a selectman's decision, pay scale. The budgets have to go on the floor, and that's what the townspeople vote on, right? And that's where you get, town's gonna agree with you 2%, or they're not gonna agree with you 2%, or they're gonna say, what do you mean, 0? These are my neighbors, right? They're the ones who are voting that. The department heads need a tool to help them budget, right? And that's all this is a tool to help them budget, really. And you guys can change this however you want to change it. That's your decision as a board, right? But it gets rolled into a budget. Now, whether the budgets fly on the floor, that's a whole different story, right? That's a whole different battle. And as people change and thoughts change, or Republicans change, or Democrat changes, or whatever it is, right? That's politics. That's a democracy. That's how it works. You can't change that, right? So, to your point, if Derek's not here, well, and he runs, then the town didn't support him. They supported somebody else. That's their decision.
Right, no, and that's the thing, that's the unsurety though.
Right, but it's not a sure world.
There's no guarantees in life,
Right.
other than death and taxes.
So no matter what we do with this, the Board of Selectmen can always override it at some point in the future. Is that basically what this is, right?
That's what it is, right?
So we could say
you guys can do
2%,
whatever you want with it.
3% this way, 2% this way, and it doesn't matter because it could all.
At least from the information I have, is that this is not a floor item. This is totally the Board of Selectmen's decision on what to do with
Right.
we can all advise you, but you have the last say on it. So.
And just a point of clarification too, I don't have a problem with the idea of this. I have a problem with the numbers that are in here. I just want to clarify.
And we all agree with you.
No. But what I'm saying is this, I don't care if we just change the numbers and keep the formula. I don't mind getting their step raises, because that does allow us to put an employee that comes in with longevity into a different step. We just have to budget for it. We may have to go for a RAT or something like that if a person's hired in the middle of a fiscal year. But that's an unforeseen circumstance with someone that came in the door and had 10 years experience. So that's something we know how to deal with. But the point is to start over with the steps and the wage for each new fiscal year with a whole new scale. That's the point. I don't have a problem with punching in numbers and recreating this, and then whatever happens outside of that, whether the board, whatever board it is, decides to give a 2% across the board cost of living, that's fine. It's just that I have a problem with the data on the sheet. That's the issue.
Don, did you have a comment?
No, I know that the last wage scale was voted in at the town meeting, and that's why the gist I got from Rich was that you go into town meeting to have it voted in. I have seen from other towns, they have implemented a fiscal policy for wages that gives guidance of you know, the lesser of a certain percent or a COLA increase, you know, where you could implement a guidance for future wage scale, so you're not set into 2%.
Okay.
You know, they have that flexibility that they say, okay, I know that I want to give something every year, so it's going to be the lesser of 1% or some economic rate, whether it's COLA or whatever they want to tie the data to. But that's also, it's not set in stone, it is just guidance for you guys to go off of. So it's not an arbitrary rate that you're increasing. It's some sort of guidance in order how to, how to increase or not increase through the years without it being arbitrary.
Okay. So I think the important thing is decide on a starting rate for 2023. And, you know, Mr. Nason, do you have insight on what he's proposing?
I can't talk about the individuals themselves because I'm not that close to them. All I can tell you is generally how businesses do it outside of town here, and there's no guarantees, right? I don't hire a person guaranteeing them anything next year, right? It's not I guarantee them a starting wage. They're gonna accept it or not accept it, that's their business. But along with those wages comes a bunch of benefits, right? There's vacations, there's insurance, there's this, there's that, and every other thing that all adds up to really what their base compensation rate is. So it's
a big picture.
It is a bigger picture, right? So
But we're looking at right now, the proposal of $3
right.
of a $3 increase.
Say it at $17.55. I wouldn't attract many people under that. So, but I
And
gotta look at the
what's
individual
minimum
skill
wage
sets
now?
needed. you know?
$15. I mean, we'll talk about that next. If you look at my EMT, my other one, I'm paying my EMTs right now. You know, if they're just an EMT and they're coming in to fill a part-time shift for an 8-hour shift, I'm paying them less than McDonald's makes. People at McDonald's makes.
Yeah, my secretary makes less than.
They're advertising
They're under-
$15 an hour, and I'm paying them just under $15 an hour. As
Yeah.
EMTs, they have certifications and have to keep it up, and are doing life-threatening.
And I know the town is not held to that standard, correct, Don? That we are not required to pay a minimum wage. We're not required to do that. As a town, we're exempt. Ethically and competitively, it's probably not a best practice
Yeah.
because you're gonna lose people if you can't pay, say, compete with McDonald's, which is paying somebody a couple dollars more an hour because of the state minimum wage. So it's you know, and yes, the town's not required to abide by certain employment things. I thought that was interesting at first too, but, you know, it is what it is.
So could we move on to the EMT training, just to see what that's gonna look like? Because it might help us.
So,
Like, what do you propose for that category?
So I did the same thing. I looked at a $3 raise for that,
Okay.
because I do believe that someone that is, you know, there's a difference between someone that's a firefighter and an EMT, that they can roll on both trucks and they're filling two different roles, potentially, with someone that's an EMT and running strictly on the ambulance. I do agree that there could be a difference in the pay there, you know? But what's, one of the things I wanted to fix is that, you know, when it came down to, like, you know, when we actually look at line items coming down here in my part-time help, in my EMS hourly shift rates, okay, I need to be able to, you know, work with both salaries, meaning that if I'm gonna say I pay 32 hours worth of part-time help every week, I pull different people in. Well, I need to be able to pay in that line item, I need to make the shifts so that if the person fills both roles, they get the same as a firefighter EMT that was just, we were just looking at, but if they're an EMT, they get paid at this rate. I can't pay a firefighter EMT at just an EMT rate. You see what I'm saying? I gotta make it fair across the board. So that would fix that as well. So, you know, I'm not saying I'd always, if I have an EMT that's coming in and doing a shift, the most important thing for us is to get the ambulance out the door, okay? The ambulance rolls more than any other truck that we have, okay? I'm not saying the fire trucks aren't important, I'm just saying that we live and die by the ambulance. That's what municipalities do. I mean, that's the truck that rolls most of the time, and the one that we need to staff 24/7 as much as we can. And you know, I will add that, you know, speaking selfishly from the fire department's aspect, not just Warren, but across the board, we've taken a real big hit in terms of, you know, every town. No one is exactly signing up for extra ambulance shifts right now. I mean, with the, you know, fun of getting exposed to COVID every 3 seconds, and, you know, so the rate increase just needs to happen just to keep people coming through the door. No one is really knocking on our door volunteering anymore. We're trying to think outside the box with the junior firefighting program and all that stuff, because public safety in general and healthcare in general has taken a tremendous hit after this. People are leaving in droves. So that's another reason why we have to increase these rates, to just attract new people to keep coming in. And that's another important thing to not forget about, because we have taken a huge hit, all of us, not just Warren, all towns. You know, they're just struggling to get second ambulances out and other calls covered and stuff, because no one is really coming back, you know, because of the issues that COVID has created and stuff. So that's another whole ballgame all by itself, but, you know, but we do need to increase. I did increase the rate the exact same way, so that it was a fair across the board. They're first responders, whether you're an EMT or an EMT firefighter, doesn't matter. You know, they still deserve that same increase, because we've just been so far behind, as you can see. I mean, like I said, they're advertising, every time I go to Palmer and I go by McDonald's and it says now hiring $15 an hour, it just drives me nuts, because I know what I'm paying these poor people that are actually going out and getting exposed to COVID and blood and everything else in the world, and it's just frustrating.
So, yeah, because we are paying below minimum wage right now. So, what's your feelings?
So, on the $3, I'm good with the $3. On, I guess, the bigger question of, do we go year to year, or set the schedule up with a fixed percentage? Either way, you know, year to year is fine. Again, I think the idea of going, you know, if every year the departments can take a look, because now we're gonna go through inflation this year. So next year, you know, 2%, yeah, we wanna do 2%, but we may have to maybe do 3, because we're gonna be back under the average again or something, right? So if we go year by year, then we can be more responsive to what's happening, to keep our positions attractive and keep people in town. Instead of just saying, 2%, that's it, 2%, you know?
Okay, what do you feel?
I feel that we should only help them with their suggestions, but on our end, try to make it work as easier for the other departments with the budget and all that thing. So, again, I'm not an expert on this area, I'm learning as we go, but if we can please on both sides, like, we can please there as their need to increase the salaries, so we don't lose people, and we support our fire and police and highway, and at the same time, it's easier on this side to provide that. So whatever option of the two, you know, I will follow and I will support, because something needs to be done in a positive way.
So, you know, I think at this point, we at least need to decide fiscal year '23. And maybe we can hear out and do a little more research on either projecting '24 and '25 fiscal years, or just saying, like, recommendation from Mr. Nason is, next year, we decide on increase across the board, you know, for every employee, whether it's nothing or 50%, you know, whatever, you know, just being ridiculous about it. But
Yeah, no.
at that point, we evaluate it, like you say, and go from there.
Mhm.
And, you know, or we can, you know, I think we should get some more information about that
Mhm.
and maybe meet with FinCom a little more on that specific subject and how that would be done. And, you know, also meeting with Don to see if this is something, maybe a bylaw change needs to be done, or something needs to be done, just to make sure that we're not promising something right now that we can't do. Or we might be obligated that we have to do this now for the next 3 years.
Mhm.
But I think if at least we get the baseline down, we have a starting point. And then we could sit there and say, okay, yeah, I think 24, if we have to, say 1.5% or 2%. And then 26 would be, well, 25, probably the same thing. To give them those years of cost of living increase. But I definitely think tonight we should nail down what we want for them, for the 23 budget. And I kind of agree, we're losing people here. We're working against ourselves and not paying fair wage. Because other towns are obviously paying much more than we are. And that's hurting us. And it's hurting our department heads because now they can't hire the people because nobody wants to come here for those wages. And I think in a market that we're having right now, it's very hard to hire certain people and keep them employed, because what we've been seeing now is Warren is a training ground, because we're desperate, we're hiring people, we're getting those people in, training them, and they leave.
Mhm.
And they're making much more money somewhere else. And we need to stop that somehow and make people want to stay here, because we've already invested in them. We've seen something in them, department heads seen something in them that they want to keep those employees, but we're restricting them from doing that. They don't have the tools to keep those employees. So, you know, I think, honestly, I think a $3 down the pay scale would be a good point for you. And that would bring you comparable, or at least competitive, with the majority of the towns. The bigger towns, we're never gonna compete with them. We can't. If they go to Sturbridge, well, which, in this case, they're actually making less money in Sturbridge, if we gave you the $3. But, you know, towns like Belchertown and Wilbraham, you know, God bless you, good career, thanks for helping us out. We can't give you
I
a
can
$10
never
raise.
fault an employee for going
A
to
$10
a community
raise to
like
start,
that.
you know?
It is what it is, but what I can tell you what I have heard, in, you know, doing like an exit interview with someone or something like that, I haven't had a single employee ever that has said, I hate you, I hate this department, I hate the people, I'm out of here, I don't want to be here. I've never heard that. I hear, I love this place, I wish I could stay here, I just can't afford to. I'm actually lucky in some aspects, because even the ones that left, I've retained them as call firefighters, so thank God for that. I still have them on the roster, they're just no longer full-time for me anymore, they've gone somewhere else full-time. So at least I still have them in some capacity, because they didn't want to leave, and that tells me that's a great thing. They didn't leave because they hated every second of it. They wanted to stay as much as they could, they just couldn't afford to stay full-time, and that's the difference.
Okay.
I think it's clear what, I mean, we've heard the arguments, and I think it's clear what we need to do. Like you're saying, that for 23, fiscal year 23.
Don, you have,
I just had some,
also, can you actually just come up front, please, and identify yourself, so everybody knows who you are?
Dawn Swistak, treasurer. I agree with what's being said here, that the whole wage scale needs to be brought up. I agree on that. I think what we also need to look at is Adam is the first to present, and it's nothing against you, Adam, because trust me, I think you guys, you're the heart and soul. But I think we honestly need to look at what's a $3 increase gonna do? Are you increasing it for all the departments, just Adam's department? Like, how?
Well,
I guess
what we
I-
asked for as a board, we asked them to provide what your surrounding towns, what's competitive in the surrounding towns, comparable to us. So they did the research, identified what the starting pay is for each of these towns, and how, this way we can compare to what we get.
R-
Because one of the problems is yes, I understand the budget-wise, we gotta be fiscally responsible, but we're not being that responsible if we're just constantly cycling people through us.
And I see that too, because I do HR, so I constantly see the onboarding and offboarding, and trust me, it affects my office. And that's not what I'm saying, is I know they did the research, but I guess with budgets being due on Monday for all departments, are you laying this so that all departments should be increasing? Like, we need some guidance as to how to budget our salaries, because we've gotten no guidance whatsoever. So that's a huge line item of salaries throughout the town. So any increase is going to affect the town-wide budget, and I guess we need to look at that.
And that's what we're trying to do.
But on a department by department basis, I
Yes.
guess, what's the guidance for the departments to put in
And
this
that-
salary
that's-
line item so that we
That's
can
what
have
we're
a
doing.
budget?
The departments, we're trying to figure out the pay scale for them. So a department should be looking at the projected, what they would like to have, okay, if they were to get a bump where they feel they should be. Because each department's recommending, police department's recommending an amount through the union. Okay, fire department recommended theirs, highway's recommending theirs, okay? So the departments, you can't just sit there and say, I'm gonna give everybody a $3
Right.
pay
Yeah,
raise.
no, we're not.
Absolutely.
Because that's not gonna work, okay? Some departments you have to have professional licenses with, okay? We know we're having a hard time with certain departments, say sewer department. You need to have wastewater operator license to such and such grade. There's only a few of those in this state, okay? And if we pay the cheapest amount for that position, nobody's coming here. And we know that because we've gotten fined. And do we keep on facing fines from DEP and the EPA? Or do we pay somebody the amount to make them competitive with other towns so they stay here and we don't get fined, say, $10, $15, $20, $100,000 when we could have given somebody a couple dollars more? So it's case by case through the departments. And it's up to that department head to say, this is what my person should be making, and this is why. Because I've done the research, all these towns are paying more, and I'm losing them. And the opposite. You know something? I'm paying the highest prevailing wage throughout all these towns. Well, you probably don't need an adjustment on your pay scale at that point, because you're doing pretty good. But there's other departments that have been lacking for years. And that's why we're trying to pay attention to this now and say, okay, you guys sacrificed long enough.
And that's kind of where I was asking is, where's the guidance coming from? If you're giving it to the departments to come in here with their salary requests, then that's good to know. Because
Yes.
we didn't know what to come in with, speaking for some of the other departments, we're like, well, how do we budget our salaries? Are we leaving it zero? And you guys setting the rate? Are you expecting us to come in with it and you're?
No, you guys are the department heads.
Okay.
You should be doing the work. It is impossible for us to do all that footwork while doing everything else we do. And to be honest, it's your job to do that. They're your employees. You're making the recommendation.
Well, we
And
wouldn't
would-
we wouldn't understand what to pay.
And that's the
a
thing.
fire
And for
We
the
don't
past
know.
3 years, we've had this wage scale, so to us, it's been dictated.
Yeah.
So, and I think that's why I'm just asking, you know,
No,
how
you're-
is
you're
this budget
hired-
process going to go
You're
out this
hired to
year?
be the department head.
Don,
You need to run your department.
what I have seen is that people have been just putting 3% from what the pay scale was before. So if that works, that's what they do. If not, then they give me paperwork to back up.
Okay, so the guidance is coming from the departments? Okay.
Yes.
Yes.
All right, thank you.
You know best. You know what situations you guys are in. You guys are fighting this battle to keep these employees. I know Jeremy is constantly trying to, you know, if he wasn't such a good supervisor and a boss, he probably wouldn't have anybody.
Probably down to one.
But because he's a
probably one
great guy,
person,
people
right?
want to work for him. Same thing, you know, with Adam and Jerry. You know, I can tell you right now, you know, if I was getting paid crap and somebody treated me like crap, I'd be gone. But if you get treated well, you might compromise on the pay for a little bit, but eventually, you know, you gotta decide what's best for your family. So, but yes, it's up to the departments to come to us and propose what they want to do. We're here to help facilitate and make a decision. You guys are there to educate us on what you want to do. But if you come in here and say, oh, I think my employee needs a $150,000 pay raise.
I understand, Teresa. I'd just be very interested to see what the bottom line is gonna look like this year with the increases, so.
We'll have to take all this
But-
into consideration and then see where we land.
There will be sticker shock. I'm sure that will come
Oh, yeah.
at the town meeting. However, if it is a united front from all things that,
And
all advisory boards, all select boards, if everyone comes together and says, look, folks, this is a broken system, we've torn it down, and we're rebuilding it for the better of the community and to keep people in place, I think the general public would understand that.
And that's the thing about it. Because again, when we propose it, in the end, people are probably gonna be a little upset because it's gonna go up. The problem is, they're not seeing the other sides of it too. They're not seeing things like, okay, the overtime rates now. Now we gotta pay these people more overtime because we're losing people. So we can't just say, you know, Adam, you don't have the guys, don't respond to that fire. You know, don't go on that ambulance call, we can't justify the overtime. That's not gonna happen. He has to send somebody has to go. Do we wanna pay somebody a fair wage? Or do we constantly wanna have to chase overtime, which is gonna be much more? And same thing, you know, with other departments. Say, wastewater treatment plant. Do we want to keep on getting dinged with fines from DEP? And their patience is wearing thin with us because we have been trying to smooth them over and do the best we can. But we got fines hanging over us for hundreds of thousands of dollars if we don't fix that. And what do we pay? Pay somebody a few dollars more? Or we suck it up in fines because we can't get the person. So we gotta do something.
And I agree, the system is broken, and
Yeah.
it does need to be fixed.
And that's why we're trying
and
to fix it now. And yes, we agree, there's gonna be sticker shock
Mhm.
at the meeting. But we also need to be able to identify, okay, you don't wanna pay the person, you don't wanna raise highway's budget by 10 grand for a salary. Okay, this is their overtime rate to keep that and plow these roads and do all this other stuff now, which exceeds the 10 grand basic salary. You know, it goes over, you know, above and beyond what you would have paid the person basic wage to keep them.
Or even like for snow removal, contracting other people to do it.
It's
Yeah.
extremely expensive.
Very
Right.
expensive.
If I
right?
told, well, how much we spent just in the last storm and contractor rates,
Yeah.
it's pretty much close to what we spent in overtime for most of the winter already.
Right.
So as far as paying our own people, it is so much cheaper to pay our own people better than it is to hire outside.
Yeah. Yeah.
And again, the quality control is better because they're all under me, through me, and we're all working together. Where on my outside vendors, I'm constantly on the phone, constantly checking up, making sure they're getting their stuff done, which they've been awesome. We're very, very lucky, where most towns have not been able to hire vendors to cover those routes, where I've actually been able to bring people in. And luckily, we actually had a surplus. I actually turned a couple people away, which, was very fortunate. But that only lasts so long. Again, people are like, oh, well, if I can go to the next town over and get paid $30 an hour for my truck more. Well, Jeremy, you're great, and I really love helping you guys out, but for a 5-minute ride down the road for an extra $300, $400, $500 a storm, see you later.
Oh, yeah.
So, and that's the
And I
same
think
thing.
any one of us would do that too.
Yeah,
Because
but
looking into it-
again, you don't have to rely on the vendors if you take care of your people.
Yeah.
And again, paying a better rate, it's the same thing for us. When I bring in my part-time people for snow removal or snow plowing, I'm asking them to take on this big responsibility. Okay, you're putting yourself out there in this situation. It's dangerous. You have to be skilled, you have to pay attention, you have to stay up for long hours. When everybody's sleeping, we're going. And to compensate them, because their rate coincides with our bottom rate. So when our bottom rate is here, I'm bringing in somebody who's never gonna see overtime, because they get called once a week maybe for the last storm, 26 hours. We worked straight, went home for a few hours, came back for another 8 hours. Those part-timers never saw a dime of overtime. They saw our straight time, low rate the entire time, and they didn't sleep either. So we're blessed to have them. But I would like to keep them coming back, or maybe even have the option of maybe getting somebody more and somebody new to come on by saying, hey, listen, $3 an hour more. I know it's not a lot, but it's definitely something, and it shows up. And just by doing that, next thing you know, the word goes around, hey, you looking for any more drivers next year? I heard you guys are paying better now. And it's like, hey, yeah, we are. Perfect. We can fill all our own equipment. And we put everybody in our equipment, we save money. We save a lot of money.
Yeah.
So, and that's a big thing. So, and this points in that direction. At the end of the day, you spend money and you really save it in the big picture. So, and I think we have to move in this direction. And I'm very excited that everybody seems to be on board with a very similar view. So,
Did you have anything else, Tom?
No.
So, let's decide for 2023 for the fire.
Okay,
So, do you want to do a motion? Now, one thing I have to say is, just to keep it consistent, if we're gonna vote on an increase, let's do one increase and not like, because I noticed one of yours, you wanted to pay your guy a little more. It wasn't a $3 raise, it was a little more than that.
Well, that's only because I factored in, and again, because going back to what Jeremy just said, and Mr. Chairman, you said the same thing, that the only issue with just going $3 across the board is that I do have some people. I have one that's been there for 16 years. I have another that's been there for 2. I've been there for 15 years. I'm starting 16 years in July. So they're already at a different step. So all I'm saying is that, that person was gonna be moving to another step anyways in the fiscal year. That's why they look a little different.
So,
That's this
How about-
page here, right?
Yes, correct.
Yeah, so all you're doing is moving somebody up a step. You're not
I'm either
changing
adding
them.
$3 to the minimum step, or I'm going to the step that they should or would be moving to and just adding $3 to it.
yeah.
so one of the things I would say is, we should really have a performance-based system also.
Yeah, we are.
Because, once they get to that step, they're there. Okay, and then they gotta wait 3 years. But I think if we passed something in the personnel bylaws where a department head can recommend bumping to the next higher step increase based on somebody's performance, like you're saying, Mr. Nason, you want to reward the people that work hard for you, and you want to give that discretion to the supervisor, the department heads. If we did something where we did a change saying, okay, based on somebody's performance, the department heads are allowed to recommend an increase to a next higher step based on their performance. I think that would also give them a tool to get best quality work, and also being able to bump their people up, and not having to wait 3 years. So essentially, if you're an amazing employee and you say you worked for the fire department for 4 years, you got an amazing review. Okay, I'm gonna make a recommendation to bump them up an increase. Next year, awesome job, amazing employee again, I can bump them up again. So they could effectively move up quicker.
I just want to clarify, if you look at those numbers on the second page, the reason why they're different for the second, third, and fourth employee is because, again, they were going to be moving on the pay scale. So they are coming out into a third year where they were moving up. So that's why that looks different. The base rate was the 2055, would be the base minimum starting. These guys have already been in the
We don't
system.
have this up on there, so people
Yeah,
can't see
so I'm
that.
looking at that right now, what my numbers are, and the reason why the next person is at 2089 was because they were going to step one, coming off of minimum and moving to step one. So that's why their number is a little bit different. So if we don't award them that, we just go 3 across the board, we've taken that step away from them.
So
That
that is what we're looking
they've
at.
technically earned by their longevity of moving through those 3 years. That's the only reason those numbers are different. It's not like I picked them and said, I'm gonna pay you more because I like your shirt better. It's because they have already been here for a select amount of
Right.
years, and they were gonna be moving into a step.
But your hourly wage that you have here matches your new step system with the $3. That's what I guess I don't understand. So like the person you're saying is going to step 6, right?
Correct.
So you have that 2261. I mean, that's what a step 6 is. It's a 2261 for the
But if
new-
I kept it in this fiscal year, I would have kept them a step back, is my point. I
Step
moved
5.
them prematurely up to the next step so they could be there, knowing we were fixing this rate once and for all, hopefully.
All right.
So they didn't lose the step, I guess is what I was trying to do.
So first of all, the steps, if they're based on longevity, then they're
They're not gonna go
independent.
backwards.
They're independent from what you set that rate at. If they've been at step 5 for 3 years, then they're supposed to go to step 6. It doesn't matter what the rates are, they should be at step 6. That's my opinion.
Right, I wouldn't say, okay, now you're gonna drop down to the bottom and start at step 1 again.
Or just stay at step 5 for now you're at step 5 for 6 years.
Well, I guess I'm
That's
just
a
trying to
weird thing.
identify on paper why their numbers look different than that, if that's the question. It's not,
So-
like I said, it's,
So the bottom line is $3 more an hour through the steps.
for this,
Yeah.
yes, it's a $3 increase throughout the steps, yes. I guess that's the simplest way to say
So
it.
we, all we gotta do is adjust every one of 2022, $3, and that's your starting for 2023. So, yes, Mr. Mason?
I don't understand why we want to just make it simple, right? A firefighter, regardless of where he falls in a range, is worth anywhere from here to here, right?
Yep.
And it's up to Adam to decide where he belongs in that scale, right?
Right.
Now, that takes care of this year's budget, right? Once we have all departments do that. Now you say, okay, next year, now we have time to talk and negotiate on how we want to take care of it next year. So you decide that, okay, we're gonna give a 4% department increase on their budget. We'll let them decide through the review system, or how they look at their people, okay, I'm gonna give this individual 2% because he's not performing, right? I have troubles with him, he's not coming around. This guy's, he's my number one guy, I'm not even paying him for it, I'm gonna give him 4%, you know, so you set the percentage rate, but you leave the
Leave the
room
wiggle
within that for the department heads to reward the performers.
Yep.
And
Right, and I
keep
think that's
building
where
their
we need to
team.
do more research and talk more about
So-
doing something like that, but I think we need to set,
Right, set it now.
23.
Set it now.
This is
Set
the
that
starting
now.
rate.
Yep.
We'll worry about steps and
Down the
performance
road.
reviews and
Down
everything
the
else
road.
later on, because that won't come into play till next
Next
year.
year.
So you got time to go through all your evaluations, like, yeah, because there's gonna be good pieces of this, there's gonna be good pieces of that, there's gonna be good pieces of that, there's gonna be bad pieces of that. You wanna take the best out of whatever you can,
Right.
and make it as simple as you can
Yeah.
for all the financial elements, so that people can do their budget
right.
and.
And that's where we really need to sit down,
Get rid of the steps.
Yeah.
pick that, and how we're gonna do that for the whole town.
Right, exactly.
Because we can't decide that right now for the fire department.
I'm good with just setting the hourly rate for FY
So,
'23.
do you wanna do a motion?
Well,
Or
hold
you
on,
got a
I
question?
just want to make sure I understand. So what you're saying, John, is when you bring in somebody new, you're going to pick 1 through 10 and start them there.
Correct.
But then after that, all bets are off. 'Cause
Correct.
you-
Then they
may
go
get 2,
into
then they
that
get 4.
percentage.
Okay, all right.
Based
then
upon
and that-
performance
Right,
and
okay.
recommendation.
Right.
And then, so the goal would be every year is to set that new standard for the people coming in, right?
Well, you're gonna bump the lower end and you're gonna bump the higher end. right?
Yeah,
Correct.
yeah, but you set
Every
that,
year,
that
because
new
based on what the
scale.
economy's doing right now.
Okay.
But it's up to you guys to decide, okay, yeah, we're gonna do a 2%, because that's all we can afford this year. And it's up to the department heads how they're gonna allocate that
The
2%
2%.
out, based on the performance of the employees they have working for them.
This guy might get 1%, this guy gets 2.
Oh,
Or
I see
that
what
guy
you're
gets
saying.
3, or
Yeah,
whatever.
or 3 and
Or
1.
you don't
Okay.
have to spend it all.
Whatever,
you know?
yeah.
So wait,
So-
so, okay, so I want to understand, so if Jeremy has a $100,000 payroll budget and we say 2%, so now he has
100,000 plus 2% on top
plus
of that.
2%,
And that's what he has
And then-
to allocate.
And I have to work my raises out of that.
Correct.
sure. I,
But there
Again,
has
we
to be
have to work
written
that out.
documentation
I
to
think
why
tonight-
you gave the
Back it up,
raise.
right.
We're gonna have to do a lot of research on that, and figure
Yeah.
out how to do it, and with Dawn and Tammy and FinCom and department heads, and that's something I think we all do as a larger
Yeah.
meeting with all the department heads to figure out how to do that.
I,
But I think tonight we should decide on
yeah,
2023. Let's set the beginning rate,
okay.
and then we can reinvent the wheel.
4,
Yes, sir.
4, not 3, 4.
You're saying 4?
Yeah.
Okay. I would, I say stay with 3 because we're only at the first department here.
Yeah.
That's okay.
I mean, the other thing is, do we have to vote on this right now? Or can we hear all the departments and then go back and maybe do one motion or something like that and just say,
We could
okay,
always do that, you know, we could do
I
it
think
as a group motion and say, hey, we're gonna accept, you know, their proposal of $3 per hour. And I think we can put it in what the fire department's proposing right now, and understanding this is a proposal, and at the end, accept all,
yeah,
or
I would feel more
none,
comfortable.
or whatever.
Because we may
if
get
we
to a
do that.
point where we're like, oh my gosh, you know, this may be too much, and maybe we have to adjust a little bit. And we could adjust everybody, I mean, maybe instead of $3, we make it like $2.85 or
So-
something.
Yeah,
you
if
know.
that's
Your
what you have to
proposal-
do to make it work
Yeah,
financially.
so
for
we're
the budget.
close.
Your
but we didn't
proposal
quite
is
get it.
$3 through 2023, okay? And that's for fire, the firefighters and the
EMTs.
EMT.
Basically, our 2 categories on this would shift by $3.
Yeah.
Okay. And we can work that out.
So I think, right now, at least, we're happy with that. So I
Yeah.
guess, again, we have to see how it all shakes out, but I think we're on board with that tentatively.
And again, this will also give us the opportunity to propose it to FinCom, and then they can kind of look at it and say, hey, you guys are getting out of hand here with the money.
Yeah, yeah.
And
I look
make a
at these
recommendation.
wage scales and I say, this is well overdue, personally. I mean, I know what I pay my people, I know what we pay to attract people in. And I
Well, we
also-
don't know that, but you're also one member of a board,
Of a board, and yes.
and you gotta sell it to the rest of your board to be able to, so,
They might be
But I
a
have to
little
say,
cranky
this has been an
sometimes, but they're
awesome discussion,
reasonable.
because this is exactly what we needed to do, is just hash this out a little bit and come up with some
It's
ideas.
8 o'clock and they can't come down.
yeah, we're gonna have to take a 5-minute break to allow them to switch over.
Is that it for finances?